Hey everyone, welcome to Sociastrology. Today we're going to take a look at the Virgo new moon that is taking place on August 23rd. So we'll go ahead and take a look at this collectively, and then you can check the timestamps, and I'll take this through the signs as well to look at how this is going to be impacting us all personally. So what's so unique about this new moon is that it's what I'm referring to as a black moon. Astrologically, we don't really have a word for this, but it's the first of two new moons in Virgo in a row. And that's very unusual. Typically, we get a new moon in one sign and then the next new moon will be in the other and so on. But occasionally, it's similar to a blue moon where you get two full moons in a row. And so I'm going to borrow the astronomical term that is used for two new moons in a specific month. This is not in the same month, but it's in the same sign, which is much more significant astrologically. So this happens pretty infrequently. The last time that we had this take place was in March and April of 2023, where we had a new moon at 0 degrees of Aries, and then we had a new moon eclipse at 29 degrees of Aries. And so we're getting the same thing this time, where we have a new moon at 0 degrees of Virgo, and then we're going to get a new moon eclipse at 28, 29 degrees of Virgo. And that one's going to take place on September 21st. And I'll do a whole video just about that and taking that through the signs as well. To me, this is phasing in that eclipse season a bit early. And it's also really strongly emphasizing new beginnings in the Virgo sector of our charts individually, and then along the lines of the themes of Virgo for us collectively. We also have very close aspects that are coming off of the outer planets to this new moon. And all of these aspects are pretty tense. So we'll get into that in a moment as well. But I want to start with the having two new moons in Virgo in a row. So with the double new start energy that we're dealing with here, it really speaks to me of wiping the slate clean. There's a purification kind of an aspect to Virgo. And so this could be really exciting for us of like starting a new chapter. It's kind of like if you were to give a brand new journal to a Virgo that you know, and how excited they would get about having a new journal, having new stationery, and just starting from scratch, starting from something that is perfectly clean, very pure, and it's what we decide then from that point forward that's going to be written on those pages. And I think with this first new moon, there's going to be some tension around ideals versus reality and trying to bring those ideals into reality, trying to bring them into form with this earthy new moon here. This is also something that I definitely associate with Virgo in and of itself, which is how to take a pure idea, a pure form, and bring it into a material form, how to create that, and to as little as possible be disappointed with the results of what's actually created. So there's a need here to adjust, to bridge that gap between ideals and reality, and possibly even discern and identify what those divergences are between what we would like to be seeing and what we are seeing. And if that's not completely clear just on the face of it, then to work through, to organize that a bit, to analyze that, to really dig into what are the specifics of what we would like to see shift into a different form. This could certainly have to do with our work, our working systems, communication with others, our health, and also on the level of wellness. So how it is that we're feeling as well. So I think this is going to be a major focus. This is going to be a major theme in the coming month, is that organization, just trying to do things systematically, trying to figure out how to take a goal and turn it into actionable steps so that we can put our effort, our practical energy, put our mind to getting to that point. And with Virgo as a Mercury-ruled sign, it is going to want to break things down into those smaller steps. So that is something that I would highly recommend, because we're going to be getting a lot of support for that, especially with things that we're trying to launch or trying to start up. Or even specifically, and I know that this is the case for me personally, but things that we've already started that we're wanting to tweak, that we're wanting to improve on, that we're wanting to get into a different form, and how to action that in a way that is practical, sustainable, that supports both the labor as well as well-being. So full disclosure, I'm going to be working on a lot of tweaks and improvements on the channel pretty shortly here. So additionally, with these new moons, we may be very aware of, again, where things are falling short, but I'm hoping that we won't fixate on those aspects of critiquing what's already existing, or seeing the complications, seeing the faults, seeing the obstacles that may be in the way. And I'm hoping that we can, with the North Node here in Pisces, which is going to be super relevant all this month due to eclipse season, this is the eclipse point in the sky, to really lean into that dream, to lean into the ideal, even if we're not there yet, to allow that to then motivate us and to pull us forward with the North Node on the other side of this. We're definitely supposed to be focusing in on this organizational aspect of Virgo, but these new moons, the new moon here and then the eclipse that we're going to see, they're going to straddle the South Node point. And so this speaks to aspects that we will need to release. There may even wind up being throughout this month, and increasingly then as we get into September as well, things that we may not have done as thoroughly as we would like, or even matters that we used to dwell on quite a bit, connections we used to have, old jobs, old tasks, old routines, old habits, things like that could also wind up coming up for review, or to really purge any sort of residue or remnants of that experience, or even any conditioning or expectations that have been built upon perhaps difficult habits that we've experienced in the past. So another thing that I would recommend with this on the collective level for us is we will have a lunar eclipse in the middle of this up in Pisces, and that'll bring up a lot of feelings about things, a lot of kind of romantic visions of how things ought to be, or how things could have been, or how things used to be, and so forth. And so the extent to which we can perhaps write that down with Virgo here and try to turn that into information that we can act upon, that we can analyze. I think that that would be really helpful for this eclipse season coming up. It is also worth noting that this eclipse season is the only one that we're experiencing where we're going to have a full pairing between Virgo and Pisces. So again, really focusing on bridging ideals and reality. This is our opportunity to really focus in on that and to do that, and to have a lot of impetus and possibly even catalyzing moments to bring those things together. I'd also keep in mind or pay a bit more attention to communications. There may be hiccups here. We're still getting used to having Uranus in Gemini, which is going to cause little unexpected disruptions in communication or surprising communications, things like this. We also still at this point have Mercury moving back over that area where it went retrograde. Plus we have this Mercury ruled new moon followed up by a Mercury ruled eclipse. So there could be meaningful, almost karmic feeling, either misunderstandings or really connecting with what someone is communicating, and having that be a significant pivot. We can often get these interesting catalysts that we wouldn't expect, that seem to just come out of just practical, everyday routines, communications, words that people say. Things can just be a little bit different and can hit different and wind up setting us on a different course. And I do look at the nodal axis as a course correcting kind of energy, but heavy emphasis on the correction point with these two new moons on the South Node in Virgo. We're correcting for things that we have probably overlooked in the past. So we could even see those hiccups in communication be something that we misunderstood in the past and that suddenly comes through and suddenly becomes clear. That's another thing we're going to experience for sure in the coming years with Uranus and Gemini as well. Just, those lightning flashes of insight and awareness. It kind of reminds me of when you have a conversation with someone and then like 30 minutes later, you're like, oh, I should have mentioned that, or, oh, that's what they meant. Why didn't I get that at that time? But with the nodal axis involved here, this could be years ago that you're just kind of suddenly having an insight on what someone meant by something. Maybe this is advice that you received. Maybe this is someone explaining what their experience of something was, and then finding yourself in a similar kind of position and now fully recognizing or really feeling and understanding what it is that they were getting at before. So switching gears a little bit, but another thing that we can definitely utilize this alignment for would be if there is something that you're wanting to change with your routine, if there's a habit that you're wanting to start, if there's a habit you're wanting to give up, if you're wanting to get more organized, if you're wanting to get more efficient or streamlined with your work, this should be really helpful for that. The same then going for health. So if there are any regimens that you are wanting to start, if there, again, are any habits or patterns that you're wanting to release, and this doesn't just have to do with physical health, it is also well-being is a major focus of Virgo. So are there patterns in relating, patterns in communicating? Are there patterns in the way that you conceive of limitations? One thing we may want to consider here is if there's any disappointment avoidance in our patterns or in our conditioning. The way that the nodal axis is aligned right now would be pushing us to get out of that, to try to release some of those things, to embrace just whatever's going to be with the North Node in Pisces, and to release needing to understand things ahead of time or needing to know how things are going to be playing out, needing to have all of the answers, and perhaps getting a bit perfectionistic about that, wanting to do absolutely everything in one's own power to control an outcome, especially to avoid anxiety and things like this. I feel like that's where a lot of anxiety can come in with both Gemini and Virgo, the Mercury ruled signs. It's just that nothing's ever really guaranteed, and they are really wanting to make sure that they're as informed as possible before committing to something. But that's not always possible. And in fact, sometimes we can have our greatest, the Jupiter-ruled signs, Sagittarius and Pisces, some of our greatest results by just kind of giving it up to God, just being like, I'm going to do what I can. I'm going to control the controllables, and I'm not going to stress too much or waste too much energy on trying to figure out what the outcome's going to be. I'm pursuing this because I feel like it's right, I feel like it's good, and I feel like it's healthy. And so then basically Virgo the details that you can, which is to say, keep them clean, keep them organized, try to discern where your own potential pitfalls may be, but also try to remain compassionate with yourself around the fact that you're a human being, that you can't always be perfect. And that should never really be what we strive for. So as we're wiping the slate clean here, if that's not something that is possible, or at least humanly possible to do on a 100% perfect level, giving yourself a little grace with that, trying not to sweat the small stuff too much, trying not to focus on where the faults may lay. So one example I could think of around that is if you're wanting to start a new project that makes you a little bit nervous about like putting something out into the world, wondering if you're ready, wondering if you're good enough and things like this. With the double new moon here, it's really encouraging to just do it, to just get started, to just allow for that first step to be what it is, without it needing to be perfect, because often we can hold ourselves back. And that's one thing I'm really trying to articulate here is sometimes we can really keep ourselves in a bit of a box because we feel like something isn't quite perfect, or maybe we look up to others and they inspire us in some way and we feel like, well, why should I put this out there when there's this thing that I think is really awesome that someone else is doing? So trying not to compare to others and trying to allow for your starting point to be what it is, and to not nitpick that too much. And then beyond that, just try to figure out a schedule. If this is something you want to do that's ongoing, if this is something you want to organize a bit better, focusing that perfecting energy just on the fact, just on the information, and not on the content of your dreams and trying to nitpick at that. So as I mentioned, these new moons, they are straddling the eclipse point. I feel like we're getting some energy of the eclipse season phasing in at this point. For one thing, it's usually at least a week before the first eclipse in the set, where we start to feel that. I would say even potentially 2 weeks before. And this new moon is directly at 2 weeks before the lunar eclipse in Pisces that we're going to get on the 7th of September. So I think we're getting into that direction, and we can start to see how we might be able to do a bit of the karmic correction aspect of the eclipses, how we might be able to hopefully get out a bit ahead of that and think that through. So with Virgo, we also see themes of the harvest. So reaping what's been sown is a major influence when we're dealing with the South Node in Virgo and eclipses along those lines. So what have we done in the past? There is a weird time loop thing that winds up taking place during eclipse season, and it tends to bring up matters of consequences for things that have come before. And so that's, of course, why it looks quite a bit like karma. But with Virgo here, really purifying, clearing the air, trying to really take ownership, again, perhaps especially along the lines that I've mentioned, but nitpicking others, telling others that something is not quite good enough, even if this is done in a subtle way. We may even be confronted with where we've been perfectionistic around ourselves and haven't quite started in the past, where if we had, we would probably be at a better point at this point, you know. Health-related behaviors, patterns that we've tried to sweep aside, whether we've been compassionate and supportive of people, grateful for those who have helped us as well, or who have offered some service to us in our lives. So there's this energy of releasing or realizing, recognizing where some of that energy is in our lives from the past that maybe we haven't dealt with quite yet. I really just have this vision with these new moons in my mind of just sweeping up and just trying to clear the air, to clear the space out of any of the junk, the dust, the muck of the past, for the sake of our own well-being and that of those around us, as well as for the sake of our dreams and our ideals, and being able to get more organized with that and feel like we're mentally less cluttered, less distracted, especially by anything that we are trying to block out. As honest as we can be with ourselves about all of that, and then taking those little steps that we can, day in, day out, to realize that during this period of time, I think we get the absolute best results out of this eclipse season that's coming up. So focusing on humility, on learning, and taking in lessons from the past, and being okay with that. We all have lessons from the past that we can learn. It's totally okay. It's just when we try to avoid those things, or when we are too critical with ourselves about how things have gone, that we start to run into increasing trouble rather than releasing these things. So recognizing patterns, healing those patterns of behavior. Now, I also wanted to mention that this is tied into the outer planet minor grand trine that we can see here, which is very significant, and it's speaking to this era that we're living through currently and that we're going to be living through in the years to come. So this is tied into this in a very awkward, uncomfortable manner. So it's very likely that what we're seeing right now, especially with these energies having just recently lined up, with Pluto in Aquarius, Saturn and Neptune in Aries, and Uranus in Gemini, it would be great if we can, rather than just feeling uncomfortable like a lot of us are, if we can maybe write down or journal about that, or try to really hone in on what aspects of this are we not comfortable with. Is there anything that we can do about that, even on a personal level? Is there a way in which we can really identify our ideal role within the coming several years? and lean into that. How is it that we can use our skills in this situation? Are there any skills that we're wanting to work on and improve upon? Again, any patterns of behavior, things like that, that are going to help us for several years to come. So we have quincunxes, these green lines. I usually don't use these in the videos just because it winds up adding a lot of detail to situations, but it's very, very relevant. So I'm going to be pulling those in. So we have a quincunx from this new moon to Pluto, another to Saturn and Neptune. And of their own, they point to a sense of discomfort, something that needs to be adjusted. It's not necessarily going to force the issue itself, but we can feel it. And so we can do something with that discomfort of correcting. And there's something there about the narratives of this time that are currently coming apart. Narratives that may have stuck with us since like 1989 when we had the last Saturn-Neptune conjunction. Narratives about ourselves with that Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries. What are the structures that seem to be coming apart, and how can we envision a better alternative to those things? With the quincunx to Pluto, we can see that there's a discomfort with the way that power and control are being wielded throughout this time. So is there something that we feel has a sense of power and control over us? Is there anything that we can do to make that situation more comfortable? Are there changes that we can make to free ourselves up a bit? Is there a way that we're able to exercise a bit more control and authority in our own lives, at least over our own energy and our own minds? And then we have this square, which does tend to spur action. This one is between the new moon and Uranus. So there's still discomfort here. There's still an adjustment that's required. There's tension, and there may even be an underlying conflictual nature between those placements. But the squares usually catalyze the action that's required to deal with the situation. And so this is very much in the place of mind, our habits and our minds. So our ideals, our ideologies, how it is that we're wanting to free ourselves up, where it is that we're feeling a bit claustrophobic. We may be feeling a sense of increased around this time mental overload, so information overload. And that may be something that we're wanting to control for as well. Because we might be getting a junk narrative, a narrative that is basically outdated, that we're going to be phasing out in the coming year or two anyway. And there may be attempts to like control around that, especially from, on high, the powers that be in media and so forth, that try to put out specific stories about the world, which impact us in the sense of what we think is possible for us as well. They can make us fearful. They can make us excited about XYZ that may or may not be real. And so if we're really feeling the pinch from that, if we're really feeling like there's a lot of pressure put on us from the outside world, we may want to take a step back. And that may be how we choose to handle these tense aspects, is tuning out from that, trying to find a different type of a pattern rather than paying attention to everything that's being said or trying to be vigilant. There may be something here about simplifying with that new moon in Virgo as well, purifying, simplifying, connecting on a more grounded earthly level of the people around you, or the people that you really resonate with, the people that make you feel good. Like, how do you feel after you take in a specific kind of a story? How is it that you feel after you engage with certain media? And then taking action based on that, creating new habits and new patterns based on that. And the changes that we're making during this period of time are, if we are not just straight up experiencing massive shifts in our personal lives, especially in the Virgo area of our chart, which we're going to get into when we do the sign by sign. But if that's not happening to us, then it's likely that the shift in patterns that we're trying to implement throughout this time, and what it is that we're trying to organize better in our own lives, is going to have the impact of a massive shift. So I would expect a lot of knock-on effects, hopefully mostly positive. And yeah, finally, I would just re-emphasize the point of protecting your mind a bit throughout this time, purifying that. So if there's a weird news story, if there's some bad news, if there's something that is making us quite uncomfortable out in the world, really giving yourself permission to tune out of that, I think would be great for our mental health with this new moon taking place in Virgo just before eclipse season. And collectively, that may be part of the major consequence that's playing out collectively during this time, is that by trying so hard to control the emotions and the mental cycles, the habits, the attention of the public with the moon involved here, there may be a slippage of control where a lot of people are tuning out. And so then there's less of a vector of control there through controlling the story, through pushing ideologies, through trying to exercise power over minds. Yeah, not to mention there could definitely be some revelation kinds of vibes that are taking place with this double new moon, information coming out, especially around details or numbers or things like this, things that have been written down, things that have been communicated. And we could definitely see that on a public scale. Also treaties, agreements, things like this, things put in writing, and patterns of behavior that are malignant in some way. I would not be surprised to see stuff like that come out into public. So yeah, I think that is what I have for the Virgo new moon. I will be covering the eclipses very shortly. I'm also going to talk about when this Uranus goes retrograde. I'm pretty sure there's a lot that's happening this month. Plus, of course, I'm moving. Full disclosure, these new moons are in my 4th house, and of course I'm moving during this month. So I'm going to try and keep up with it. I'm going to try and, organize my time really well. I am so focused on these new moons and try and get these things out, and then including the September forecast. So all of that coming up. And with all of that said, thank you so much for spending this time with me. Definitely feel free to use the timestamps to skip ahead. I would recommend most reading for your rising sign, because then the horoscope for this placement will be playing out in the whole sign house in your chart where this is taking place. But if you want to check for your sun or other placements, then definitely feel free to do that. And if you don't mind giving the video a thumbs up, I would greatly appreciate that. It helps to spread the video around. And do consider subscribing for future videos. I would love to have you here. And big thank you to the members of this channel for your support. So Angel Niblock, Michelle Howell, JJ, Deborah Kale Leavitt, Gary A., Startlingly True, Patrick McKenney, Jody, Anne Marie, C. Rezer, Peace Out, Maria Serral Hyro, Rachel Windholtz, Lisa S., Aya, The Z-Man 1291, Lynn Newman, Long T Standing, The Nelson Cat Maya, Connie DiMartino, Dolly Geezy, Mango JT, B Love, Grace, Psyche Lloyd, Noah, Aquarian Antiquarian, Susan Martin, Jonathan Mason, Chad Wiseman, Ezekiel, David LaRosa, On the Road, Adrienne K., Chris Woll, Light Warrior 999, Astrology Party, and Samuel Poppin. Thank you all so much for your support. Much love to you. And without any further ado, let's get into the sign by sign. All right, so for Aries, we have the new moon in Virgo taking place in your 6th house. So this is the house of health, of routines, your daily working life, your habits. So this is bringing in a major new start in this area. So focusing quite a bit on your daily routines, on wellness, productivity, basically work-life balance stuff. So trying to clear that up, trying to get that to be in a state to where it's as sustainable as possible, where you're feeling like both your needs as well as the needs of, say, your working life or those around you are being met. There's also a strong need to declutter. So this may be a physical thing, but it may have to do with your routine, your schedule, your habits, things like this. If you're able to organize your working space, or just like the space that you tend to exist in quite a bit, that your routines tend to take place in, maybe this is your car, maybe it's your garden, maybe it's your kitchen. But I think that you might be surprised with how much of an impact reorganizing and sorting those spaces out will have. And yeah, looking at any parts of your routine that might feel like there's not much return on investment. So things that maybe you're still doing out of habit, but you haven't really enjoyed for some time. If there are aspects of your schedule that maybe you procrastinate them a lot, and so therefore they take up way more time than would be nice or necessary, trying to really organize around that, figuring out how to make those parts of your routine take up a lot less of your mind and take up a lot less of your time. Basically optimizing for efficiency. But one thing I would say is you may feel very motivated to work a lot. And I would hope that you can also, like this work-life balance, basically wellness, that you'll try to create a balance between those two things. So one of the aspects that I'm definitely thinking of when I'm talking about optimizing for efficiency is freeing up time for you as well. And that's also then a big part of those boundaries around what it is that you feel like you need to do for others or your work, and then creating boundaries around that leisure time, that time that you have for you, for your own wellness, for your own mental, emotional, physical, energetic health. One of the things you may totally be called on to do as like the ultimate goal of reorganizing and stuff like that is specifically, I want to be able to have very well-established me time. I want to have very well-established downtime. And I think that that would be absolutely great. And again, that's then going to ripple out through your life. But the action steps of that may well look like reorganizing your schedule, dropping some routines that you have, getting a handle on work-life balance, things like this. So another literal way that I could expect for this to play out would be a new job or new responsibilities in your job, a new role or something like this, new relationships with your coworkers, new coworkers coming in, new subordinates possibly as well. So a shift into something new that is in your working life. If you have stuff going on there that looks like endings right now, I would say that it's probably actually a new start that's getting seeded. And yeah, other than that, I would just emphasize this progress over perfection. So trying not to be too hard on yourself about things, trying not to hold yourself to too high or too perfect a standard of your work or a routine or your health. I feel like often we can struggle in these areas just due to if we can't optimize perfectly in the way that we could imagine that we might, that we can get into this kind of effort energy of, well, there's nothing I can do on this front, so I'm not going to get to that ideal that I'm setting out for myself. And so since I can't reach that right now, then I kind of may as well not try. And that's one thing that I would caution around is that try not to let perfect be the enemy of good enough, basically. And rather just take the steps you can, organize what you can, try to create, as good of habits and patterns for yourself as you can as well. Especially if you're needing to make space for some new routines or new work or new responsibilities that are coming in, while still trying to maintain some space for yourself here and for your own well-being. But yeah, that is going to be a lot of the focus of this Virgo new moon for you. So thank you so much, Aries, for spending this time with me, and I hope that this treats you super well. All right, so for Taurus, we have the Virgo new moon taking place in your fifth house of children, creativity, joy, interests, hobbies, basically what you love in life and your own creative expression. So this can definitely be kicking off some new creative projects, some new interests or hobbies that you're pursuing and that you're trying to create a pattern of, or that you're trying to bring into your routine. You might even be trying to liven up your daily life more with aspects of life that you love and just emphasizing those more. This could even wind up bringing in people that you enjoy as well. So new connections that are based on mutual interest, whether they be flings or friendships, people that you do activities with, people that you feel are able to accept you as you are, at least in that area of your life that they're intersecting with. If you have children or there's children in your life, this could also speak to major new starts either with them, like in your relationship with them, or a new start that is really significant for them that's also having a strong impact on you personally, something that you would really enjoy or that would have you be more active or something like this. So, for instance, if they are getting into a specific sport or something like this, maybe that's pulling you into like a community of parents where maybe some of them share interests with you as well. I also can't help but notice with Virgo here, there may be something about reading with this, or a form of media, a form of communication that is an interest of yours that is getting renewed throughout this time. Yeah, ultimately just a renewed sense of fun, of like your childlike nature coming out again. This could be a major healing of inner child stuff as well, which should have you feeling like you're able to experience more joy, to be more inspired, to be more creative, and to follow your curiosity, your fascinations. Another thing I would say, because we have new moon, full moon, new moon, it's bouncing back and forth between 5 and 11 here, is that there may be something around worthiness or social expectations or trying to meet the needs of the group around you. This is really emphasizing for you that there doesn't have to be a conflict there. So your own authentic expression, what really pleases you, what you truly enjoy, what your interests truly are, that should really be in alignment with those around you. And if you're getting critique on any aspect of that, then I would say it might be worth kind of taking a step back from some of those connections so that you can really be yourself and really feel the inspiration that is yours. That's your prerogative, you know. Also, if you've had any inhibitions along these lines in the past, it might be really wonderful to set an intention to not critique yourself too much about your expression or about your creativity. And that may be something that's really kicking off here, is just kind of letting up on yourself along those lines and how much that can allow for you to creatively flourish by just taking your foot off the brakes, basically. Not worrying so much about what other people might think. But yeah, I think that's pretty much what I have for you, Taurus. So thank you so much for spending this time with me. And I hope that this new moon treats you wonderfully. All right, so for Gemini, we have the new moon in Virgo taking place in your 4th house of your home, your family, your roots, your core. So there may be some really significant changes or new starts in this area of your life. There may also be some themes that are somewhat concurrent with your career as well, because you have the eclipses taking place along this very significant axis relating to your home and family and then to your career as well. And we'll get into that when we talk about the lunar eclipse in Pisces that's coming up. But yeah, there may be some very significant changes to your home, to your living space, to your family life. There could be new additions or people moving out. There could be a new relationship or a new way of relating with your family. There may be new starts for family members as well. So your parents kicking something off, for instance, and that having an impact on you and your life as well, or your connection with them. This can also be really helpful for reflecting on your roots. So on your conditioning, on your childhood, on your early home life experiences, and purging and purifying, especially with the fact that these new moons are taking place on the south node side of that equation. So this is really all about purging what is not useful, purging what feels kind of mucky in this area in order to start anew. Also, if there are any home improvement projects or any efforts that you're wanting to make your home environment, your family environment more healthy, this would be a really wonderful help to that end as well. And I would imagine that it would just kind of come through and kind of force your hand a bit or serve as something of a catalyst to actually act upon those improvements that you're wanting to make. Maybe you're moving home, maybe you're moving to a different neighborhood. I, for one, am a Gemini rising and I'm moving to a different country. But ultimately, that sense of the meaning of home undergoing a huge shift, a huge transition throughout this time. There may also be something here about responsibilities and about how that's balanced. If there is an imbalance there where someone feels like they are taking on way too many domestic duties relative to someone else, that may well need to be communicated about, and then therefore have a strong impact on how you experience your family life. Hopefully that is not a burden, but if it feels like that, you may need to have a conversation and restructure. But yeah, other than that, kind of more on an abstract level, this could speak to, it's also like your core and your foundation, your sense of stability and where you're standing. So there may feel like there is kind of wiping that clean or cleaning that up or removing an anchor or something like that there so that you're able to make the deep-seated personal changes, especially around the health of your roots, the health of your conditioning, feeling more stable and secure, things like this. That's also taking place throughout the coming month, really. And that could also be freeing you up since you also have Uranus in your first house here, which is kind of spurring you on to free yourself. That's been spurring you on to free yourself up, to liberate yourself, to be able to be more authentically yourself. And there may be something to do with your family life or your early childhood or something like this that's calling to be purged in order for you to be able to do that. But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Gemini. So thank you so much for being here. And I hope this new moon treats you super well. All right, so for Cancer, we have this new moon in Virgo taking place in your third house of communications, your environment, your neighborhood, the people, places, things around you that you deal with on a daily basis. Technology also shows up here. Exchange, things like this. So there may be a change that you are adopting to your communication habits. So for instance, Cancer rising, Virgo in the third, you might be very soft-spoken, or you might feel like you don't speak up for yourself as much as you may think you should and probably should. And so there may be a new start there where you're trying to change those patterns and those habits of trying to tiptoe around what other people are feeling such that you're not speaking up when you are feeling a certain way. It's definitely your prerogative to advocate for yourself, and that may be something that is coming in here. Now, if there is any sort of a perfectionistic quality also around the way that you communicate, you may also need to be kind of releasing that and just allowing for yourself to speak authentically. This may even coincide with some of the lessons that have come through for you. I just did a video about the Venus-Jupiter conjunction in your first house, which should have you feeling quite accepted. So I could see how those things would go hand in hand. If the way that you are coming off is being received better, you may be recognizing, hey, I actually can speak up for myself more, and people won't be upset about that. This could also be speaking to matters of your siblings, which is also a third house thing, neighbors, your community, and bring in a lot of changes or like news, basically, along those lines. So you may be feeling like there may be a new community effort or community activity or getting involved in some way that's coming in that should be really nice, that should be something that's quite enjoyable. But you may even feel the need to purge some connections. In fact, like if there are certain people that you feel are boxing you in or holding you back or critical of you in any way, that you feel is just becoming an unhealthy pattern or habit where you feel like you're almost kind of living your life to please them and their expectations of you, this could really well be calling for a purge along those lines, especially the way that it's playing into these kind of psychological houses of the 8th house where you have Pluto and Uranus in your 12th house. And there being a bit of a like discomfort there of, no, I think that I should really call the shots for me. And that in and of itself could be kind of giving you a boost of confidence to start some new connections, to start some new friendships out in your community. I mean, one thing that might be a little annoying that I wouldn't be surprised about with something like this would be new construction or something like that in your neighborhood too. It should ultimately prove to be pretty okay and good, but in the meantime, it might just be kind of annoying to deal with. One thing I would definitely recommend with this is writing. You have Virgo in your third house naturally, so this should help with journaling and writing just for you generally. But this new moon being there, this would be a great time to start a journal, to start writing in some way. Maybe you're also wanting to publish as well. That North Node in your ninth, you're about to have a lunar eclipse up in your ninth house, which speaks to publishing or disseminating your knowledge and ideas. This could be a really great time to start something like that as well, especially since, like I said, you have these two really wonderful placements in your first house as well. Whatever that is, it should be something of a very heartening, but also healing experience to be writing, to be putting your ideas down. And that may even wind up helping with mental decluttering. I mean, for your whole life, I would recommend writing things down just because if this isn't getting written down, it's going to try and hold on to information in your mind, and that can be very cluttering to your energy, basically, to just be subconsciously kind of trying to remember a bunch of stuff. So yeah, any sort of organization of your daily life that you can do, organizing of your environment, maybe of your garden or your yard, your desk, your office, your computer. This would be a great time to, if you have an obnoxious situation going on with your computer where there's just too many files and you haven't done a purge in a long time, I would say this would be a great time to do that. Maybe you would even want to just move some things to a drive and wipe the slate clean, you know. Maybe you'd even want a new computer. That might even be a thought that could be worth entertaining. A new phone even. You may also be encouraged by this new moon and then the eclipse to explore your environment more. So it's similar to this like community connections. You may find that by just kind of being out in the community, by either exploring your community or the adjacent area, so you don't need to go far necessarily. You may go far for sure. Short trips, day trips, little adventures in your city, that could wind up bringing you into the community in a stronger way as well. And it may even give you some personal insights on like how you communicate with people, how you connect with people. Especially if you've been on social media a lot recently. One thing that I've noticed is that when I go on like Facebook or Twitter, things like that, the image of the world that I get from that is so much more negative than what I get when I'm just out in the world. And that may be something that you're also recognizing, is just feeling like there's a bit of a breath of fresh air by dealing with people face to face rather than dealing with them through social media. Dealing with algorithms. But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Cancer. So thank you so much for spending this time with me, and I hope that this new moon treats you super well. Right, so for Leo, we have the new moon in Virgo taking place in your second house of finances, resources, values, self-esteem. So you may have a new income stream starting, or some control or reorganization of your budget that you're hoping to do. And this should help a lot with that, to starting new financial habits or to starting a new stream of income. There may be resources available to you that you're not quite aware of that are kind of able to be brought into use around this time as well. You may even be rethinking your income sources or your possessions and trying to figure out if that's really aligned with your values, or if there's a desire that you have to kind of purify that in some way, either to work in some way that you feel aligns more with your personal values, or if you have found yourself, like I have at times, owning a bunch of stuff and feeling burdened by it. This could really encourage you to purge a lot of that. Maybe you want to have a garage sale. Maybe you just want to donate a bunch of stuff and just free up space so that it feels less cluttered. There can definitely be something here about like freeing yourself up from possessions. So I guess this is like, who was that, Marie Kondo or something? You may really want to be doing something like that, of just getting rid of things that don't bring you joy. This can also help a lot for a sense of grounding or coming into a new sense of security, stability, grounding. And if you are like focusing your purchases, your spending, your budget on what is truly going to bring you a greater sense of quality of life, a greater sense of like self-understanding, or a greater sense of security, stability, this could really shore up that aspect of you, feeling like you're meaningfully grounded. Now, in terms of resources, this can also be a bit more abstract. So the skills that you carry that are a resource that you're able to utilize in order to make money, there may be new skills that are increasing your ability to make money. So that may be a way of looking at this specific aspect as well, is just that you're bringing on the new skills, you're bringing on a new resource which can pay off for you. And additionally, a lot of these different aspects could wind up weaving into matters of self-worth as well, and a sense of valuing yourself or reevaluating your value, what it is that you are bringing to the table. I wouldn't be surprised if there's something here about either asking for a raise or being evaluated for a raise. Also, on a bit more of an abstract level, this could really speak to wanting to be more self-reliant, more self-sufficient, and basing your sense of value and worth more in yourself, rooting that in you, rather than rooting that in the assurances or the support of others. So you may be feeling like you're really wanting to be a lot more independent so that you can purify your life more and have more control over your patterns, your routines, and things like that, and not feel like you're needing to satisfy someone else in order to feel secure. So that would also be something, because there are action steps you can take on that front, but it's really about setting an intention when it comes to that. So I would recommend that if that is at all a concern of yours. But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Leo. So thank you so much for spending this time with me, and I hope that this transit treats you super well. Okay, so for Virgo, we have this new moon in Virgo taking place in your first house of yourself, how you carry yourself, how you see yourself, how you interface with the world, and so on. So this can kind of be a bit across the board, because really all aspects of your life have a bearing on you and how you see yourself. And the ripple effects of things that go on in the first house can be very wide as well. But it's really all about you, matters of your appearance, your standing, and how you approach things. So in terms of a potential reinvention, this is one of the stronger transits that you're going to have in life on that front. So you have that south node going through your first house, allowing for you to purge any aspects of yourself that feel outdated and that feel like they carry some kind of baggage that you're just not wanting to carry anymore. And you have this doubling up of the new moons where you're able to then bring in a new vision of yourself to purify that image, especially if there's been any conditioning or messaging that you've taken on from other people that hasn't been the most conducive to you seeing yourself as having a lot of control over how you're perceived and your opportunities. So I would highly recommend setting intentions along those lines, and day to day, just kind of figuring out ways that you can step more into a sense of yourself that feels current and that feels more aligned. So a new sense of self-image, identity, personal development, really able to get started, to get initiated throughout this period of time. If you've been kind of perfectionistic about yourself, if you hold yourself to standards that you don't hold others to, things like this, that may also be something to kind of keep in mind, is that your sense of identity should certainly be just as important to you as anything else. You may also be going through a sense of self-improvement throughout this period of time where maybe you're developing skills or you are developing certain habits or things like this that feel a lot more aligned with you and like they're going to serve you going forward and increase your sense of self-image. You may also be changing how you present yourself, so your appearance, how you talk to people, how you approach people, how you carry yourself, how you see yourself when you're approaching others, things like this. You may be really intentionally changing that throughout this period of time and trying to, again, create those new patterns, create those new habits. So like truly reinventing yourself. This isn't necessarily a fake it till you make it kind of a thing, though that can help with building habits and routines. But this is ultimately about like changing yourself deep down in the ways that you're wanting to, renewing yourself. Also really encouraged to prioritize your own needs, release any of those roles that are no longer fitting, that feel too confining. So I wouldn't be sweeping aside your own concerns, this like reinvention. I wouldn't be so much backburnering that for something like career changes necessarily or something like this, though they're probably going to wind up feeding into each other. That maybe your goals or your position or your status is also undergoing a huge amount of change throughout this time. So there could be something of a feedback loop and a bit of tension there where you're trying to really break through and trying to really take a completely new tack in life throughout this time. And that is very, very well supported. So yeah, major new opportunity to align your actions with purpose, to align the way that you carry yourself, what it is that you are pursuing and things like this with your sense of purpose. But yeah, that is what I have for you for now, Virgo. Again, we're going to have an eclipse in this place for you. So definitely stay tuned for that as well. There's going to be a different alignment with the planets here. On the front end, it's taking a bit of a push, but it's a good kicking off point for this. So yeah, big transit for you, and I hope it treats you super well. And thank you so much for being here. All right, so for Libra, we have the new moon in Virgo taking place in your 12th house of your subconscious, of solitude, of working behind the scenes. This is also a place of compassion, spirituality, well-being on a much more abstract level. So you may feel super introspective throughout this time, really reconsidering internal habits and subconscious patterns, things that are very easy to overlook most of the time. But it looks to me like there's an opportunity here to really dig into that and clear that out, to clean up, purify, purge, and clear your subconscious from matters of conditioning or habits that you've built up. So naturally, this is really excellent for therapy, for any sort of spiritual, meditative, or introspective, reflective practices. Any sort of energy purging like Reiki or certainly smudging would be great to do throughout this time. Maybe it's crystal work or herbal work, therapy. This also wouldn't be bad for paying attention to your physical levels as well. So in terms of health stuff, you may just want to get things that can go on under the surface that are hard to see looked at. So if there are major sensitivities that seem to be coming up, these new moons may be pointing those out to you. And so you may then wind up becoming aware of those things. And that can be super, super helpful to just be aware of that something's going on. Maybe you're recognizing a sensitivity that you have that does something inside your body that you're not quite aware of. And especially when it comes to sensitivities, like I definitely have a gluten sensitivity, but it's not like the worst thing in the world. So for me, it winds up causing inflammation, which makes me very uncomfortable, but it's not this kind of excruciating thing where it was super obvious. It definitely took paying very close attention to when I was feeling certain ways and what I was eating and things like that. So there may be something like that that you're just becoming very much more aware of throughout this time. And that is just brilliant when you know, finally, as to what's causing some sort of an issue. I would also definitely recommend prioritizing not just this rest and reflection and things like this, but also time alone. time on your own, where you're not being distracted by other people, by concerns, by your routines, by getting things done. Just time to relax and to, in those moments, especially for you, since you have Virgo in that 12th house, your mind will naturally organize things. Your mind will naturally come up with plans that are going to work better than if you were to try and force the issue. Any sort of guilt or quote unquote negative feelings like that as well, shame, anger, frustration, resentment, things like that. This is also incredibly helpful for purging that through a sense of compassion with yourself as well. And perhaps even compassion with others, that certainly with this happening in your 12th house, you don't need to share that with them, but just to allow for yourself to release whatever you can that goes on subconsciously. But yeah, ultimately, this is just setting intentions around healing and processing subconscious materials. That is going to help you to get the absolute best out of this alignment that's coming up, where you have the new moon in your 12th, the lunar eclipse in your 6th, and then the solar eclipse in your 12th. These are areas that can go overlooked quite often. And so to have this really clean and purifying attention being brought to this area, it's a wonderful opportunity to clear that out, to do a bit of a sweeping up. But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Libra. So thank you so much for spending this time with me. And I hope that this transit treats you super well. All right, so for Scorpio, we have the new moon in Virgo taking place in your 11th house of friends, allies, benefactors, hopes, dreams, aspirations, social groups and networks and things like this. So this could definitely be kicking off some new friendships or social connections. You may be connecting with a network or some sort of a group project, working with others toward common goals, common interests. I would expect that you'll be feeling pretty social throughout this period of time and wanting to connect. And so setting your intentions on that can be really helpful. This can also bring in some really wonderful recognition to you from colleagues, benefactors, friends, as well as hope. I was going to say help, but hope, sure, and assistance when it comes to long-term goals. This can bridge that, where you wind up interacting with people who are able to help you out along those lines, but it can also clarify what those goals are. So this would be a really wonderful time to sit down, define that, decide what your steps are, what your longer term goals are. And yeah, like I said, there may be some recognition here. So joining or leading a team where you feel like the goals of the team or the goals of the project or the network, the organization, the institution, where you feel like those align with yours. Because we do see common goals and common cause also in the 11th house. And another thing with having Virgo here and having these new moons, the new moon and the eclipse in Virgo in this place, that would speak to me of not just looking at those long-term goals and planning for that, but then breaking that down into more easily actionable steps, where like the first, second, maybe third steps of it, you can actually see, I can do that right now. I could take action on that currently. And that'll then get me to these next steps, to where you're able to not get overwhelmed with the big, massive, these are all of the things that I'm going to go and do in the coming several years, which can be kind of daunting, but rather looking at the short-term aspect of those long-term goals and finding those action steps in that. Making lists, and then also taking account of the social resources around you. So is there something that you're trying to create for yourself where you know someone who's able to help you in some way? Maybe very worth tapping into that connection, seeing if maybe there's a way that you can help them in return and so forth. Maybe you're even wanting to start a partnership or a project with someone else. And that can then help you also to review who winds up supporting your growth. So not in the sense of you need to help me because I know you, but just being able to recognize in gratitude who it is that's really supporting you. And if there are people that you feel like when you tell them your aspirations that they're not as supportive as they could be, if they cause you to question those things in a way that really feels unhealthy, it may be worth purging and kind of cleaning up this area as well. Do you have connections where you feel like they're genuinely just a bad influence on you? That would be a really wonderful question to ask yourself with this influence too, with its ability to purify and purge. And so then, therefore, also setting intentions around your ideal influences and around the ideal influence that you want to have on others. This can bring in something like that where you do have a greater sense of influence. And so you're needing to think through, how is it that I want to carry that? How is it that I want to carry this leadership or this recognition or this impact on others that I'm finding myself in a position to be able to carry? Even if this is something that you've done for quite a while, you may be rethinking and starting anew with that influence that you carry as well. But yeah, I think that that is pretty much what I have for you, Scorpio. So thank you so much for being here, and I hope that this new moon treats you super well. All right, for Sagittarius, we have this new moon in Virgo taking place in your 10th house of your position, your role, your reputation, your legacy, your career. So you may feel that there are some very new intentions around your professional goals that are coming up for you around this time. You may even be put into a position where you're in a leadership role, or you're starting on a new project, or you may even be starting a new career or starting a new job, being put in a new position or role, and therefore having new responsibilities that you're needing to carry. One thing I would recommend around that is just kind of being as organized as you can with that. Should help. And for instance, if you're getting a promotion or you're being put into a leadership position or a position where you have more than that you can kind of claim as experience and build up as experience through that position, this could then offer you an opportunity to refine and push forward your sense of ambitions. So if you have reached a certain goalpost, then we can move those goalposts further. And that may then have you feeling a renewed sense of purpose. There may even be something about a shift when it comes to the people that you're working with. So one example of this could certainly be if there's been like an overbearing boss that is not well liked, they could wind up not being around anymore. Something like this with these two new moons that are going to be taking place in this house. And then there could be someone else that winds up coming in, and they may be a great influence, they may be very inspiring, or they could also bring on some challenges of their own. But shifts and changes when it comes to your career life having a stronger impact than they usually do. There's also big questions around work-life balance that are coming up throughout this whole month. So we're going to have this new moon in your 10th, we'll have a lunar eclipse in your 4th, and then that solar eclipse in your 10th. So back to back across this axis, and the 4th house being your private life, basically. So it's likely that there's a call for balance between your public and private life and your public and private goals. And you may be needing to streamline your working life in order to meet some of your personal goals as well. Or you may even need to call for greater support from those in your personal life around being able to be freed up to achieve some personal goals that are on the table for you right now. Yeah, also, if you've been thinking about updating your resume, if you've been thinking about putting it out there, this would be a really great time to do so, and setting intentions around being in a position that feels more aligned with you if you are feeling out of step with where you've been. If you're in charge of business plans or figuring out how to organize and create the steps that either your business or the business that you are involved with are following to get to certain goals, this is really excellent for organizing, streamlining that and making that very clear, communicating that well as well, and getting people on the same page. But yeah, I mean, you may even straight up be starting a new business throughout this time, or really getting spurred on by these influences to do something like that too. But yeah, I think that's pretty much what I have for you, Sagittarius. It's going to be big career shifts, basically, is the most straightforward way to put this. And so, yeah, I hope that it treats you super well. And thank you so much for being here. All right. So for Capricorn, we have the new moon in Virgo taking place in your ninth house of expanding your horizons, of personal development, of higher education, learning, publishing, traveling, foreign places, themes like this. So anything that pushes you outside of your comfort zone and beyond your limits. So there's likely to be major new starts along those lines in your life in this upcoming month, and a lot of growth and potential healing, clarity, like purification along those lines. So getting really clear about what it is that you're wanting from perhaps your educational goals or from travel or from your beliefs. There can be a huge change in your perspective when we have new moons like this as well in the ninth house, as this is where our worldview winds up coming in. So the big overarching beliefs that we have, you may be either breaking those down and kind of checking them, or you may be adjusting those to reflect more of how the world is changing currently. If you're a teacher or a writer, this would be a really excellent time to do the like pushing that out there into the world aspect of this. You can also do some planning around that as well, some editing perhaps, but this is definitely excellent for putting your ideas out into the world and getting a new kind of a response to that. If you already teach, write, you may be wanting to rethink or reorganize around that as well. So even like just as an example, I used to write and edit while I was writing. I would try to form my sentences mostly in the way that I wanted for them to be. And so I would run into creative blocks on a pretty severe level. And it was once I started just stream of consciousness writing and then going in and editing later, because I love editing. It's the actual putting the ideas out there that can be a bit stressful for me. So just doing that, just stream of consciousness, placeholder sentences, like I know I'm going to put this idea, but I don't want to frame the sentence yet. Things like that to just get the whole framework of what it is that I'm wanting to say out onto paper and then coming through and cleaning it up later. Something like that, where it's like you're just restructuring the way that you write or the way that you are teaching a certain topic or your teaching plan, whatever. I haven't taught a course before, so whatever your course plan or something like this, how it is that you teach certain topics. Also with Virgo here, you may be kind of picking at yourself a little bit about whether your daily life is reflective of your ultimate values. And that's great because that can really get us in check. That can really check our assumptions too. That can get in the way of any sort of hypocrisy, things like that. But I would also throw out here, this can be perfectionistic. And again, I would just reemphasize, try not to let perfect be the enemy of good enough, because that can be kind of discouraging when we're perfectionistic with ourselves about that. But yeah, I would really be setting intentions around becoming clearer and clearer and having a more and more kind of purified and holistic worldview and spiritual perspective, intellectual perspective to be brought into either groups of people who can help with that, or certain books or sources of knowledge that are able to make that worldview and that perspective a lot more robust and complete and updated. Again, keeping in mind that this is all tied into these outer planets. And the outer planets right now, the way that they're configured, speaks to the new world that we're coming into. So it may not be like, oh, I didn't have a complete worldview or something like that. It might be literally that you're needing to update it right now because there's new information that we're all grappling with. And so that has a bearing on what are the horizons of your mental expanses your worldview, your perspective. I don't know how to say that. Also of your sense of your place in the world. That's also likely to be shifting, of what it is that you feel like is possible, likely to be shifting due to the fact that the world is very clearly changing right now. So this may be calling for a major refresh and purging some outdated views and perspectives on things. I mean, another little example here, but for instance, we used to not do the whole digital nomadism thing. And that could definitely expand your horizons if you're starting to conceive of yourself and your possibilities as not limited by location, you know? But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Capricorn. So thank you so much for being here. And I hope that this new moon treats you super well. All right, so for Aquarius, we have the new moon in Virgo taking place in your 8th house of other people's resources, dependencies, vulnerability, matters of trust, commitments, intimacy, esoteric matters, transformation. And so there's a major emphasis here with the South Node in your 8th house, with Virgo being your 8th house, and with this new moon and then the eclipse. This is big, big, big time purification and purging, especially purging of any like crap from people, from other people that you've picked up on, that maybe you've taken as, well, this is just how it goes with me and other people. This is what I have to accept. This is what other people bring to the table. Like all of those outdated expectations that are no longer satisfying for you. Things like that, really releasing a lot of that. Also, just any expectations that you've built up. If maybe you have some walls that you've built up around trusting other people due to, again, experiences that you've had in this area, it may well be time to reconsider those, to reevaluate those, and to see if those are not just boxing other people out in certain ways, but boxing you in certain ways as well. So reevaluating those boundaries and things like that, I'm not at all saying loosen them in any huge way. Boundaries are very important, and I think that this is actually going to highlight those in a way. But it's about looking at those in a new light and making sure that those are still serving you in the way that they are framed currently. Otherwise, you might want to restructure those a bit. So yeah, a deep, deep, deep transformation is underway. And these new moons are really going to be reflecting that and helping you to purge anything that is really deeply under the surface and can feel like it's under your skin a bit. This is also a place of debts and financial planning, things like this, where your finances intersect with others. And by others, this can also mean banks, institutions, things like that. So planning, getting really clear about where you're standing with any sort of debts. It would be probably really great to look at anything that you financed, where you're at with that. You may even consider refinancing something. I don't know if that would be a great decision to do right now in, your particular circumstances or anything, but that may just kind of be something that you're looking at. Any investments that you have, you may also be reevaluating or making some throughout this period of time as well. And again, on that front, I can't really say if this is an alignment that is indicating one way or another on that. It's really just about getting super clear on all of those financial fronts. So yeah, big emotional and psychological healing as well through this purging. This is a place of where our psychological orientation and experiences intersect with that of others. So that's why I was mentioning, if you've had weird experiences with other people, if you felt like you have had betrayals or trust violated, things like that, this is about looking at that, purging that, and healing that. Yeah, matters of vulnerability. Do you trust yourself enough to be vulnerable with other people? Are you able to really root and ground yourself so much so in your own self that whether or not other people hold up their end of a situation can't really have a massive effect on you? It may then just be a disappointment, but for instance, if they were to, But if your trust is rooted so strongly in yourself that whatever other people are doing, it doesn't really matter. If they're trustworthy, that's great. That's a little bonus in life. But if they're not, that's also fine. And you can just kind of move on. That, I think, is the best place that we can be with that 8th house. And that may be something that winds up coming up throughout this period of time, is the opportunity to really ground your sense of your own value and your own worth, and then allow for that to enable you to maybe bring down some walls if they feel like they're outdated. And yeah, also releasing control over others. And that's kind of what I'm getting at with this, is like, we don't need to control others if we all are always aware and comfortable with how we know that we will react to what other people do. So if someone wants to kind of act a little bit stupid, and we know, well, I'm good either way, and regardless of how they act, I'm going to be fine, that can give us so much more room to maneuver in our relationships and our commitments and things like this. And so then we don't need to feel as much like we're in control of how other people are going to behave, because we're leaning fully into the trust of our own selves to react accordingly. But with that said, whenever we are getting financially entangled or legally entangled with other people, that can have some really strong impacts, regardless of how well we are approaching it. And there may be something like that coming up with this focus that's on your 8th house, an opportunity to maybe co-sign onto something with someone else, or to make a commitment, something along these lines. If you're feeling very comfortable with that, that may help you to develop trust with other people more. But I would absolutely not be ignoring your own instincts and your own intuition as to whether that is the best idea for you throughout this time. And with the North Node being in your 2nd house, that is really what you should be prioritizing, is, are the decisions that you're making with regard to resources and other people, are they the best decisions for you? If they're not, that's probably not something that you're wanting to get too entangled with. But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Aquarius. So yeah, I hope that this new moon treats you super well. And thank you so much for being here. All right, so for Pisces, we have the new moon in Virgo taking place in your 7th house of partnerships, other people, one-on-one connections. This can be romantic relationships, business partnerships, close friends where you have a one-on-one relationship with them, and really just other people in general. So it's very likely that you have new partnerships or new friends, new connections coming in the coming month. So people that you're going to be dealing with quite a bit and in a significant kind of a way. This is substantial connections typically. So new people coming into your life. And it could be really wonderful. And it would also be very wonderful if you can be quite clear about what it is that you're wanting from partnerships ahead of time as well, so that your expectations and theirs can be pretty clear. You do have the South Node out here in Virgo, and that speaks to purging and clarifying, releasing things basically. And so to have that out here along with these 2 new moons, there may be, before bringing something in, something that needs to be purged. And so you may actually be closing out some connections around this time as well, which is giving you this sense of feeling like you are on fresh ground when it comes to your connection. So again, the extent to which you can clarify and define for yourself, you may even want to write this down, what it is that you're wanting and needing from your connections with other people. That could be really helpful for then setting your intentions on and checking against those intentions as to whether the people that are coming in feel like they're really good for you, and what if they are what you're wanting and needing at any given time. So you may also wind up initiating, revising, changing, shifting some kind of a contract. It might be worth really thinking that through as much as you can, making sure that you're very clear on all of the details with that before you sign something, because this can speak to a substantive shift in this area of your life. So it could be a very significant, important contract that you're signing. And just looking at the other things that are going on, having Mars in your 8th, not the greatest for signing a contract, especially Mars in Libra could speak to, okay, there's then legal issues down the road from it. And then there's a square from Uranus. So surprises that wind up coming up, especially if there's anything to do with your home or property, a rental agreement, things like that. One thing I would definitely say is like, I wouldn't be signing a lease with a roommate around this time, quite specifically. But you know what's best for you, just as long as you are as clear as you possibly can be about what is in the contract, the consequences of that, and the expectations that are at all relevant to that contract, then that is going to set you up the best that you possibly could be with that. So additionally, again, just kind of clarifying connections. So prioritizing connections which are really supportive of you, which are quite communicative, where you do feel like you're clear on what expectations are. If you're approaching something like that with someone and they are brushing that off, setting that aside, that's a pretty big red flag. And that might be something that you're wanting to keep in mind, is that if someone doesn't want to be clear with you, maybe around where you stand, or around if there's something that is just fundamentally dissatisfying about the connection to you, that might be something that you're wanting to step back from so that you can have healthier connections, and so that you can ensure that you are connecting the most with people who wind up sharing your goals and your desires. And so therefore, then you don't have to hold back, because especially as a Pisces rising with Virgo out here, you're wanting to have connections where you really support and give to that person as much as you possibly can. And so it's really great for you, especially just generally speaking at any time in your life, to have people in your life who do the same for you, so that you can sidestep or avoid any potential resentments or feelings of an imbalance within a relationship, or like unhealthy relationship dynamics or things like that, so that you can just give without having to overthink whether or not you should be doing that. So focusing on prioritizing those connections which do feel really mutually supportive for you, where you are able to have that communication that you need in your relationships with Virgo out in your 7th house, and then setting the intentions and taking the steps that you're able to have those healthier relationship dynamics, and to be able to work toward those shared one-on-one goals that you have with other people. But yeah, I think that for now, that is what I have for you, Pisces. So I hope that this new moon treats you super well, sets you up for the upcoming lunar eclipse that will take place in your 1st house. And then again, the solar eclipse that you're going to have in your 7th house again in September. And yeah, thank you so much for being here.